If you're unable to attend, please can you try and organise a substitute from your own grouping if possible. The agenda pack and papers have all been pre-circulated by ModGov as is usual. As ever, if you want to speak, please raise your hand and I'll come to you when I can. If you're online, put your hand up. I promise I'll do my best to try and remember to check the screen, but Andy, my conscience, is not here today, so bear with me. I don't think we've got any members of the public in attendance today, is that correct? No. Okay. Okay, so welcome everyone to the extraordinary Audit Committee meeting, our second in a month, which is a rare treat for all of you. We're not expecting any fire alarms this morning, but if the fire alarm goes off, then follow Scott is my advice. Okay, so starting with apologies for absence. I've got a little list here. So Andy Sully, Lee Baker, Mike Caswell, Diogo, but I'm very pleased to note that we've got Mandy as a more than adequate substitute. Yeah, I wasn't able to say congratulations to you at our last meeting, Mandy, because you weren't here. But no, well, no, I would congratulate you on your new role and wish you every success, but not too much success. And I also want to say thank you for all of the hard work that you've put in. You've really driven us forward. Certainly while I've been on the committee, I've always welcomed your guidance and advice and support. So you'll get the same from us as you progress with your new role. So thank you. And it's a bit sad, but you'll always be welcome here back at Audit Committee anytime.
Can I say I'll be super subbing, so you will see me, be assured.
There's always cake for you, Mandy, don't worry. So Rosemary Woods and Gwyl is joining online. Tim is joining online. I'm not aware of any other. Oh, Lindy's online as well. Perfect. So that's a long list of apologies for today. So declarations of interest from members. No, everyone happy? Oh, welcome, Sue. Subbing for Rosemary Woods. Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. Welcome. So, public question time. We don't have any members of the public, so there's no public question time. So, moving on to a very much anticipated event in my life, which is the South Somerset District Council 2022-3 final accounts and audit. So, Maria, you're online, I believe. Are you introducing this item?
I believe that I'm going to hand over to our external auditors. So I'm really pleased that we've got the audited accounts presented here before you for South Somerset Council for 2022-23. I will hand over to the external auditors who will be taking us through their report.
Welcome, Beth.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. I am here today to present the report on behalf of both myself and Barry Morris. Barry is in sunnier climates right now, enjoying himself on a well-earned break. So unfortunately, you've drawn the short straw and you've got me today. I'll do my best to answer any questions that you've got. I'm joined by my colleague Macaulay, who's joined online, and any that I can't answer, Mac may also be able to support us with, but we can always take things away if there are further questions from members. As the Chair said, this is a big day for us. Those of us who've worked with the South Somerset audit process for a number of years, it's great to finally be here and be able to present a completed and fully concluded set of audit findings to committee. It's important for members to note that we do intend to give an unqualified audit opinion. So whilst there have been a large number of adjustments which are noted within our report, these don't impact on our ability to be able to give what we often refer to as a clean audit opinion. The only thing that will be included within that audit opinion is an emphasis of matter paragraph. That is very normal in the circumstances within which we find ourselves, in that South Somerset District Council no longer exists as an organisation and was subsumed by Somerset Council on its creation on the 1st of April. I need to get my year right, 2023. Any audit opinion that was signed after that date or within 12 months prior to that date would have included this emphasis of matter. It was included in the previous year's South Somerset financial statements audit opinion and would have been included in the other legacy districts opinions as well. So it's very normal, but I just wanted to flag that that will be included. The report itself takes members through both the risk areas that we identified for the audit, any findings against those, and then lists out all of the adjustments that we have identified, both those that have been processed by management and those that have been left unadjusted, and our assessment of each of those relevant errors or findings. You'll note that some of the report is in black text and some of it's in blue text. This is because this committee has seen various iterations of this report in the past, and the blue text denotes anything that is new to this committee, i.e. you have not seen it previously. It's also worth updating you that within the report, it does state that we cannot give the certificate alongside the audit opinion. We give a certificate to fully certify the audit as closed, and it concludes that all of our responsibilities, not just the financial statements and value for money responsibilities, are concluded. So the certificate captures things like if we were to receive an objection on the financial statements, and it also considers the whole of government accounts work that the National Audit Office ask us to do on their behalf. At the time of writing the report, the NAO, the National Audit Office, were very clear with us that we could not give any certificates until they had concluded on their work. They have recently, within the last couple of days, confirmed that we can now give audit certificates. So when we are able to give the audit opinion on Barry's return from annual leave, we will be able to include the certificate within that opinion. So that's just a slight change from the reporting that you see in front of you. I'm very happy, like I said, to take any questions on the detail of our report, and it's probably best that I don't talk you through the significant amount of detail and we just answer the questions that you have. But the one thing I did want to flag to members is that we have we calculated roughly what our expected total audit fee will be for the year. Now, this fee will be subject to the normal processes that we go through in agreeing finalised fees with PSAA, Public Sector Audit Appointments, who are the audit appointing body. For any additional fee that is levied, we have to submit it for them for consideration and approval, and we will go through that process after the audit opinion has been signed. But in order to be able to report to both members and to management, which we did a few days ago, we have calculated that we expect the fee to be in the region of £236,966. That's based on all work completed to date and an expectation of the small amount of work that it will take to be able to conclude and sign the audit opinion. So I wanted to make members aware, given the report itself does state TBC. I'm happy to take any questions, as I said, Chair, so I'll hand back to you.
Thanks, Beth. When I was reading the papers last night, my 13-year-old took note of the fees page and decided that she might like to consider auditing as a future career. So I might be knocking you up for some work experience at some point in the future.
They're our way, Mike.
Yes. So open to members for questions. Yeah, I'll come to your loads in a second, Mandy. So I wanted to speak to item 8 on the covering report, which is about the most significant finding being the reclassification of the Hewish Park disposal. Was this the item that delayed the reports coming to the last committee, or was this the one that was found late? Or
no, this was found relatively early in the audit process. It's the processing of the adjustment. I can't remember exactly when it happened. I apologise. It's been a rather drawn out process, but this was identified as part of some of our early procedures in the beginning of this calendar year.
Chair, so Ben Bryant, Head of Corporate Fund, you're right, this was what we were working on towards the May committee, and we were having to verify some of the valuations and the treatment of that in the run up to that committee, so that's where you're recording that.
Thanks, Ben. Okay, Mandy.
Thank you. I'll start. You can shut me up when you need to. So firstly, huge thanks to the staff. I know this has been an absolutely colossal task for them. And whilst we've heard about auditors' fees of well, not far off £250,000, which is eye-watering, given the size of the council and the accounts. I understand why, but it's just an understanding for me. Now, has anybody looked at actually how much staff time this has taken up and sort of what cost to the council really? And I'll start with, have lessons been learned? So that's my first question. So starting at the end.
Nikki, do you want to take that one?
So I would start with saying definitely lessons have been learned. I think we sourced originally some external help in to deliver the accounts because we knew we'd lost a significant amount of senior resource, especially those from those individuals from the Legacy Council. I think we underestimated the challenge that would prove in terms of them being able to pick that up without those legacy staff there to deliver on that. That said, I was disappointed for them not to get us a set of quality accounts that would be placed in front of the auditors. And although they did deliver a set of accounts, there were fundamental issues with those accounts that were highlighted when the audit of those accounts started, which is why we brought it back in-house. And our internal team have picked that up in terms of the work now has been redone and completed by them. I haven't quantified the time in officer time. It would be an interesting figure to quantify in terms of how long it's taken in-house and also that external resource. But I would definitely say lessons have been learned. And I think if we sought external help for any future activity of this nature, we would have to do it in a different way rather than actually just thinking that they were of a calibre to be able to just be left to do that piece of work. Whereas actually, I think we should have put someone internally overseeing it more. We just struggle with capacity ourselves at the point in time, because remember, this is the 10th set of legacy accounts that we've completed. And I think it has been quite an impact, that has had quite an impact on the team.
Thank you. And I just think it's worth for the public record for other councils, and I'm sure there'll be more unitarisations coming along if we listen to the white paper that's about to come out. So I suppose the lesson would be where you can keep it in-house. Is that a sort of fair comment?
I think so. And that's why I have complete confidence in the team that we did deliver the set of accounts in online. Well, Ben is with us today, who's led this process, but supported very much by Matthew Cook and Jason Collier is online. And without them, we wouldn't have put a set of accounts in front of you today for sign off. So appreciate your thanks to the team, because it has been incredibly hard work on them. And yeah, I'm very proud of them stepping in and picking this up for an authority they had no part of before.
Thank you. Thank you for the honesty. I think we all understand. So moving forwards, we've got massive adjustments in here. I think on page 21, we're talking about a 9.6 million adjustment. So this is multi-million pound adjustments on what was not a huge turnover for the council. So, if you balance it against the size of the council, they are massive figures. And I have to say, I found it a bit of a shocking read, having followed audit and been at audit for more years than I like to remember. I've never actually seen a report like this. So my next question is to the auditors, is this usual, unusual to see these amount of adjustments? And I suppose advice that you can give to sort of help avoid that, I guess.
Yeah, so you wouldn't see a report like this in a normal year, no. But given the circumstances that the council faced at the time that both the accounts were prepared in their initial format, and then the subsequent events that happened afterwards with the loss of the corporate knowledge, the contractors not being able to conclude the process, adding all of those factors in, this becomes a more normal situation. We do see scenarios like this. There are a number of authorities nationally that have had some quite significant reporting to members in the form of either statutory recommendations or public interest reports in some cases, really honing in on their challenges in relation to financial reporting. It is an industry that is becoming more and more challenged. And so whilst this isn't an average audit findings report, it is becoming more common, and putting in place things like the lessons learned that you have just talked about is absolutely vital, not just actually from the management side, also working with your auditors and I'm pleased to say that I personally feel like we have a very good working relationship. We've managed to get through a really challenging audit together, and we've done it because we've been pragmatic and we've been open and honest in our conversations on both sides about what is working and what perhaps isn't working, and then we're able to discuss and move forward together rather than it being an us versus them scenario.
Just to add to that question, has the changeover to MSD impacted the amount of adjustments that have been required, or is this still done on a legacy SAP system?
Yeah, Chair, so this is 22-23 prior to unitary, so before. So this was done on South Somerset's E5 system.
Go on, Mandy.
Thank you. So within the report, it says that you've not been able to satisfy that council's made proper arrangements for securing economy, efficiency and effectiveness. What I'm trying to understand, that being this is a legacy council, does that have any effect? Does that mean anything at all?
So the value for money report that we undertook on behalf of all of the legacy councils that we were the external auditor of. I think Mendip was the only legacy council that we weren't the external auditors for in 22-23. We issued a joint report that covered all of those organisations. So the report not only focuses on specific South Somerset related findings, but the detailed report which was presented to this committee a while ago, that then also focused on the forward-looking element for the new council. So to directly answer your question, yes, it does matter because of the forward-looking element, but obviously as external audit is a backward-looking item, what we have tried to do is add that forward-looking piece within that report, and then any further value for money findings for 23-24 will look to build on that as they are brought to this committee once fully finalised.
Right, for me to carry on. Page 24, it says the audit financial statements are still in progress. Now, we've had a bit of paper popped in front of us, which I have not had a chance to read. Are they still in progress now, or are we done?
I'm sorry, Councillor, that's a mistake by me in updating an old version of the report. It is complete.
Ben?
Can we note that then, just for the public record?
Yeah, that's fine. Ben wants to come in.
Thanks, Chair. So probably as you've mentioned it, Mandy, the piece of paper that I've put in front of you and also popped online, there were some final consistency review checks done with ourselves and the auditors. So what's put in front of you is the post amendments to the agenda that was published. These are confined to the 21-22 prior year columns I've highlighted in yellow. There's a summary on the front about what those changes are. They've had no impact moving into the 22-23, so in effect it becomes presentational, and those were some of the things at the time of we thought we'd completed, but the following day there was just one final review of consistency is what you've got in front of you.
Thank you for that, but it's really poor practice to throw something in front of you at arriving at the meeting. And I understand why you've done it, but you cannot read it and take it in and have a think about it. So just as something going forward, Chair, I'm sure you'd rather we had it in advance. So page 33, we've got a number of adjustments there, 2.1 million, 2.4 million and 586,000. So there's some large figures there. And on page 35, it said some assets have been counted twice or doubled, which don't really know what to say with that in terms of accounting. So disappointing, I think is the word I'll use. So my next question is, we've got a number of adjustments. Moving forward, what has to be done now? Because obviously we've done Somerset Council accounts, but if adjustments are made here, presumably that's going to affect Somerset Council's accounts in the following and subsequent years. So how will that be handled?
Ben, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so we haven't completed the accounts for 23-24, Mandy, and a big part of that is this. So the team have processed now the adjustments from the South Somerset into Dynamics 365, which changed the opening balance position for the new council, and we're having to reprocess those changes back through the accounts for 23-24.
So it might be worth saying at this point, Mandy, that at the last meeting, Barry gave an update on I suppose the plan for the 23-4 Somerset Council accounts, which effectively is that with the backstop date in February, there's no chance of getting a full audit completed between now and February for the new council. So the auditors have chosen to focus on completing this audit so that we've got clarity over the opening balances for the new council. That then limits the impact of any disclaimer that may go on to the Somerset Council accounts, because anything else, so PPE or any other things which haven't been audited for the Somerset Council accounts will eventually wash through. But if we can't get the opening balances right, there's no way we could effectively give assurance over the financial position of the council at any point in the future. So that's the approach that Barry's outlined to us, which I think is a sensible one. Beth, you can feel free to correct me if I've misstated anything.
I was just going to add a little bit of additional context, if that's all right, Chair. So the impending backstop date means that the Somerset Council team, once the accounts are prepared, will have to focus their attention on specific balances and will not necessarily be able to, in a perfect world, they'd complete all of the audit work. But given the timescales left to the end of February, it's unlikely everything will be able to be completed. Therefore, the team will focus their attention and their efforts on those balances that are most important to ensure that any form of amended audit opinion, qualification, disclaimer, however it ends up being, will come out in the wash as quickly as possible in order to give the public the greatest level of assurance we can with the time that is available to us. So there will still be some items that will be subject to a disclaimer, but that will then roll out within the shortest possible period, is the way that the team are working.
Jump ahead to a future question because you've sort of taken me there. So level of assurance, there are a very large number of adjustments here. And we know that auditors will not look at every bit of business of a council. They will have certain elements that they look at. Given the number of adjustments, you know, is it possible that quite a number of things that need to be adjusted haven't been picked up? Because I'm just aware with auditors, it's not a whole piece of work to cover everything. So for me, can this committee have assurance given what we've seen in the report?
To pick that one up, thank you, Chair. So as you're absolutely right, we give a reasonable assurance opinion, not a full assurance opinion. So we don't test every transaction, but we target our testing to the areas where we consider there to be the highest level of risk that there could be a material misstatement. Now, the South Somerset District Council accounts audit for 22-23 had a materiality threshold that was in the region of £1 million. Somerset Council, moving forward, is going to have a materiality threshold that will be much higher than that. So from an overall council perspective moving forward, you will have items that have been audited to a much lower threshold when it comes to these legacy transactions that will flow through into the overall Somerset Council accounts. And therefore you can take a greater level of assurance on some of those smaller items, smaller body connected items that are coming through because they've been audited to a lower value previously. I can't sit here and say with 100% certainty that we've captured everything because we would have to test everything for that. But in order to be able to give a clean opinion, we as auditors have to be satisfied we have done enough work on each of the areas of the accounts to become comfortable that they are not misstated by a material amount. And in this particular case, it's in the region of £1 million.
Thank you. I understand that, but there are still concerns there because I am sure, given this, there will be other things of smaller amounts, perhaps not so material, and just sort of moving forward and the new council picking this all up, I'm sure there will be some more things probably that roll out. So bearing in mind we're going to have to adjust closing balance and therefore opening balance, will that have any impact then on this year? As in, will we see anything within any of our reports this year that shows any extra pressure due to any of this work.
Nikki.
So I'm not going to lie in terms of this has had a detrimental effect on the position the team are in terms of producing the 23-24 accounts, and therefore then the prepping work that's happening for the current financial year's accounts. There is a knock-on effect. All I can say is we are putting and have already put additional resources into the team to try and get us in a better position, to add. We've had additional resources in the team looking at reconciliations for the new council, but certainly because of the new system. We've got those resources in, but we do need to try and catch up, because otherwise it's just a vicious circle of being behind and therefore then impacting on the team.
Thank you very much. Next questions, you don't need to go there, but it's on page 37. It says the MRP has been over provided for, but you say the process is appropriate. I couldn't quite understand how you can say on one hand it's been over provided, on the other hand you're saying the process was appropriate.
So there are various statutory rules that govern what an authority must and mustn't do in relation to minimum revenue provision. And generally speaking, they are focused on the under provision rather than the over provision, i.e. you're not setting aside enough money to pay back that debt in the future. So therefore, by having over provided, what we're stating is that the council hasn't breached any of those rules and regulations. They have been more prudent than they perhaps needed to in that specific set of circumstances, but that it is still an appropriate
side of that is they could have delivered more in their communities for what they were collecting because more money had been put aside. That's how I would read it if you look at it the other way, but I won't ask you to comment on that.
Yeah,
So.
I suppose there's an element of judgment because every authority is going to have a slightly different MRP policy. Every 151 officer is going to have a slightly different approach to setting what they think is a reasonable MRP provision. So, given that we've had 5 legacy bodies, they all with different approaches and policies, I don't think it's unreasonable to say that the odd one will be over the line and some will be under the line. Overall, I think it is what it is. I'd much rather they over provided and then we get the benefit of being able to restate that through the accounts, because that comes back as a benefit to our revenue positions, isn't it, overall? No? Further down the line, yeah, that's fine. Mandy, we'll move on.
Thank you. So there's another line in here that talks about unusable reserves, and I think the figure is 9.589 million. I think it's on page 54. It's getting very late at night by the time I got to this part of the report. Unusable reserves, the differential 9.589 million. What does that mean? And trying to understand why. I think it's page 54. Can you search 9.589? Will it take you to where it is? Audit.
So this is all connected to the various different adjustments that you referenced, the 9.5 million impact that's stated right at the beginning in the executive summary of our report. This is one of the adjustments that we identified as part of our work. What we found was that previous individuals who've been brought in to draft set of financial statements hadn't quite processed adjustments in the correct way, and then that often means that if you're processing it in the wrong direction, you then have double the value that you need to post in order to correct it back. So whilst that's the usable reserves element of it flows because any adjustment that is made that hits the income and expenditure statement eventually flows through to reserves through the transfer from the income statement over to the balance sheet in order to make sure that the accounts balance. So this is just processing those adjustments that have been made and stating that this item that was identified, it has been appropriately processed both through the CIES and then also through the reserves as we would expect.
I have no words for the amount of errors here that have been made. I won't comment further, but I think it's concerning, I think, to say the least, and I'm pleased that a number of these have been picked up in the report. So you said usable, it says unusable in the report. So
Sorry, that was just a Freudian slip.
Right.
Either usable or unusable reserves, dependent on the type of income and expenditure that it relates to.
okay, so bearing in mind reserves are really crucial for this council, is that going to alter our reserves figure, or is it just a bookkeeping?
There is an adjustment to our reserves position, but it's a positive movement, not a negative movement.
Hurrah. Sure Liz will be delighted about that. And I can't even read my last comment on here. So the last bit, we've obviously got the letter with all the adjustments in it. And again, sort of repeating on a previous question, you know, can this committee have assurance that we found all that we need to materially, and that these can thankfully be signed off. And on saying that, I will say it's been a humongous piece of work which we have had to go through all, is it 11? Is this the last of 11 sets of accounts? So I, for one, will be really pleased they're out the way, and I'm sure the team will, and they can really start to focus now on moving forward as a council, and their capacity can move in that direction without, I'll call it the distraction of previous accounts, but the pressure of getting all the accounts signed off. So yeah, I'd again like to say thank you, and to the chair and the committee. It's been a massive, massive journey, and one I think that isn't to be underestimated when you're talking to new councils being formed. I think it's something that probably was not touched on or to discuss when new councils was coming through and being formed, and I think it should be something that is flagged, given all the extra work it's caused for all sort of finance team. Again, I think learns and sharing things with other councils. I was talking to other leaders recently at a conference, and I actually flagged it to say, do not underestimate the amount of audit work, time and space that will be needed on top of all the other challenges in creating a new council. So I think it's well done committee, well done staff, and really great that we can move forward now without all these backdated reports. So thank you, and thanks, and thank you too for that working relationship between auditors and our staff. I know that most councils in the country are not as advanced even without all the extra reports, so I think it's a huge credit to everybody involved, and like I said, if we can get the learns down and documented, I think that will help others that will no doubt follow on.
Thank you, Mandy, for your comments and questions as always. Of course, Sue.
Right, I think this one needs its batteries topping up. Thank you, Chairman. Just in the interest of transparency, I am a former member of South Somerset Council from 2019 to 2023, and I was also Vice Chair of the Scrutiny Committee. Yes, I think when you looked at these, you realised very quickly why it took so long and why there were so many delays. It's proved to be an eye-watering, humongous exercise. I think Mandy's absolutely right, and I would agree with the comments. There will be lessons learned out of this, and I would think that it might be useful to produce a lessons learned report with an action plan as to how we can make sure that some of those problems don't arise again. And as you say, it would be something of value to the 10 authorities or 10 areas that have been identified so far under the forthcoming local government white paper, because be prepared, there is all sorts there. I think there has to be a concern as to why South Somerset found itself in a position of having to make, or others to make, so many adjustments. Was there any attempt made to hang on to staff rather than just let them go? Was there any sort of exit interview or an attempt to capture knowledge? Because this seems to be some of the problem, that people disappeared and left everybody else to pick up the pieces. And I think the results are here before us. And I have to say thank you to all the staff involved. Thank you for all the midnight oil, as you say. We probably, if we started to calculate staff time and the time of others, not to mention the unpaid overtime that no doubt went into this, you would probably wind up with a figure far in excess of 250k. And I suspect there's a certain amount of goodwill fueled getting this over the line as well. So thank you to those that have done that. So we're now in a position to produce an accurate opening balance for this new council, which we really need going forward, bearing in mind we are in the teeth of a financial emergency. So any discrepancy could prove challenging, to say the least. I have a few questions. Going back to Hewish Park, in the body of the report, it was described that Hewish Park, that the reasons it caused an issue for you was that it was classed as under construction. How did that actually happen? Because it's the home of Yeovil Town Football Club. It was not under construction. It was actually in full use and has been for a number of years. If there was any construction going on, it was likely to be tenants, fixtures and fittings, and that doesn't come into your account. So that would be one of my questions. My other question which crops up, and this might not be the place to ask it, but I would like direction as to where I should be asking it, is one of the things that South Somerset was involved in was a property development called Marlborough, which was refurbishing an former nursing home in Marlborough, and that's why it was called Marlborough, into flats and houses. This was supposed to generate profit and therefore an income for South Somerset. It didn't. The last I heard, it was at break even. And I believe at handover time, there may well still have been some work and some properties to sell on that. So I'm curious to know what happened to it and what were the final results. Did it break even or did it do even worse and actually contribute towards, I think it was the revenue loss of 1.1 million as per Appendix 4 for page 193 in the opinion letter. So I'd like to know about that one. And also, I have to say, I found it a little bit confusing and hard to follow, particularly the matters of economy, efficiency and effectiveness, because it seems as though we sort of like a horse change leg midway. And whilst we were talking about South Somerset, it seemed that those matters were referring to this Authority of Somerset Council, not SSDC. And I found that quite confusing. So I'd like some clarity as to where one ends and where South Somerset finished up in terms of economy, efficiency and effectiveness. It almost seems an academic question now. But I would certainly note it's not got a paragraph number, but it is on page 194, again in Appendix 4. I think we need to pay particular attention to those recommendations regarding the commercial property portfolio. Note the significant drop in value, the revenue loss, which is going to be carried obviously by this council, but also the recommendations which I don't think we're seen as members, which is to develop an exit strategy. We need to know what that is going forward to ensure that we don't get in a fire sale pit position, because they were all bought on borrowed cash, so you will have negative equity. I suspect we're already doing that, is monitoring income and expenditure. Maybe we need to be doing it more tightly. And certainly, I think there does need to be regular reporting because a lot of the work with the commercial property seems to be done by a separate subcommittee, and that
So,
is,
sorry, sorry to disturb your flow there. It can be a little bit difficult to follow the thread of lots of questions all at once. So,
okay,
as Mandy did, we stopped and then got an answer and stopped and then got an answer.
okay,
Otherwise,
that's fine. I know.
otherwise officers may well miss some of the
Okay,
points
well,
that you've raised. So, do you
the
mind if we
main
get some
key
answers?
is
please?
Hewish Park. We'll go with that one first. Why did it wind up being classified as under construction? What difference did it make to the accounts that may have caused some of the problems that you've picked up and some of the adjustments? You know, why did that happen?
So, sorry, I just agreed to answer this on behalf of officers, given I've been involved right from the start of the audit process. We asked exactly the same questions you did, given it's an asset we knew was operational. The reason that it started off in the first set of draft accounts as asset under construction was connected to human error, but the purchase itself, whilst it had gone through, there were still some legal costs that were expected to come in, and the individual who had been preparing the accounts mistook that for the project not having been fully completed and the purchase therefore not being complete, and so allocated them as assets under construction rather than a fully operational asset. So it's human error, but there was an understandable reason behind it.
Okay, but did that impact on the council's position in any way in terms of financial reporting?
It would have impacted and did impact on the council's asset position, because assets under construction are held at a different valuation methodology than operational property. Assets under construction are simply held at cost, whereas something that is operational is held at a value that is appropriate, a current value, a fair value, dependent on the type of asset that it is.
Yeah. So in this case, on discovering that error, it would actually have a positive because it would not be valued at cost of construction. It would be valued as it stood as an asset.
In this particular case, it increased the valuation. Yeah. In other cases, it can decrease the valuation.
Okay. And the other question was, and this might not be the place, is the Marlborough nursing home project, conversion of nursing home into residential flats, which was supposed to have generated a surplus. And I think the last time this was discussed at South Somerset, it was basically heading towards break even and possibly even going into lost territory. What happened to it and how was that looked at, catered for in the accounts?
Councillor Osborne, I'm happy to get you the figure as to whether it actually broke even or did make a small loss, but I can confirm that as at today's date, all of those properties have been sold. There was a management company that was set up for the areas around surrounding the flats and houses, and we owned that as Somerset Council just till all the properties were sold, but that's in the process. That's now transferred over to the residents and they have that now, so we are completely clear and free of Marlborough.
Okay, that is useful to know. And in terms of economy, efficiency and effectiveness, and this is where it sort of got slightly confusing because in some ways it was referring to Somerset Council. Where did it actually stand in terms of relating to South Somerset District Council's accounts up to 2023? And that again, I think, was page 193, where these matters were reported on.
Chair, if you're happy, I can take this one. So apologies, as a non-regular member of the committee, that would be more confusing to you. We report our value for money findings and outcomes separately to our financial statements outcomes, and given that report had already been to this committee, we didn't bring it to members again, save you some reading. So those outcomes were reported a number of months ago, and apologies, I don't know the specific date off the top of my head, but they would still be included within the papers. because we knew that all of the legacy councils were merging and forming Somerset Council, for the 22-23 financial year, we undertook our value for money work across all of them combined. So it covered all legacy districts minus Mendip, who we didn't audit, and also legacy Somerset County Council as well. And the way that we framed the report was we've identified certain issues and we framed the report with recommendations for the new council to be looking at, because there's no point in recommending something to a legacy body that at the point we reported didn't exist anymore. So that's why there is reference to both South Somerset and Somerset Council. It's because audit as a function is by its very nature backwards looking, but we don't want to give you information that's no good to you, and so to add value we make it forward looking.
Councillor,
So, sorry, Sue.
Sorry.
Nikki wanted to respond.
Councillor Osborne, just to add to that, those recommendations that Beth has just referred to are formed as part of a report that's reported to Audit Committee. So you see those and you see the actions against the progress against each of those actions being reported as a separate item.
So those track, thank you. And I do feel it may well be useful, and I know Councillor Chilcott alluded to it, that we maybe do look at producing, and it doesn't have to be a Shakespearean essay, it can just be bullet points. The key lessons learned, the key lessons learned and how we're going to take those lessons and apply them going forward, possibly into an action plan, and also as well as perhaps a document that would be of value to councils that are going to be undergoing this process. Maybe as a heads up, don't underestimate the asset and the resources and budget accordingly. You may need a much bigger contingency for LGR than you thought. And it's not just cash.
No, thank you, Councillor Osborne. We certainly have learnt a lot. Some of the team, I would say, are slightly traumatised by having to close this many sets of accounts and the multiple tasks that come with it. So I think we've definitely learnt lessons, and definitely as a team, we're taking that into what we're doing for going forward for Somerset Council. And actually, we do get approached by other councils at the moment who are going through similar or need to put spend boards in place or need to procure a new finance system, and we get contacted all the time about our journey on that, and we're very honest in our opinion.
Our journey. Got a nice ring to it. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a couple of comments following up from what Councillor Wood said. I was wondering, with some of these assets, there were projected surpluses or revenue. Was that before or after finance costs? Because I think that was not taken into account a lot of the time. And also, one of the lessons to be learned from the previous councils was just because interest rates are low at the moment doesn't mean you should be doing short-term borrowing. A lot of those assets should have been bought on long-term borrowing, which may have seemed more expensive at the time, but it was much more of a risk taking out the short-term borrowing.
I think they're all things for Somerset Council, and certainly things that we've learnt of inheriting 5 councils into one of the different things that were undertaken. I think probably that is something to be looked at and reflected in 23-24 accounts and 24-25, whereas this is a point in time for South Somerset.
Andy?
Wasn't sure if you were going to go on and take questions on the actual set of accounts, because I've talked about the body of the report. Is it all right to do that now? Yeah. I've looked at the accounts, and all the way through it talks about the independent auditor's report to the members of South Somerset District Council. That's listed all the way through the report. Will those accounts be updated to say that it's come to the audit committee here, because it's not to the members of South Somerset? Secondly, when you read the report as is, it looks absolutely wonderful, and I think does not reflect the challenges that have been had. Yet there's just a gap there for independent auditors report. So what I want to understand is what exactly is going to go into these accounts to reflect what we're hearing today, because it's just blank in the accounts that we've been presented with.
So from the opinion perspective, if you look at page 189 of the PAP, you will see at the beginning of the draft text of our audit opinion, it is titled Independent Auditors Report to the Members of Somerset Council in respect of South Somerset District Council. So it's very clear that we're reporting to you as the members who now have responsibility for the legacy body. The page that you were looking at, I think, is just a template page that has been in the accounts for as long as can be. Once those accounts are finalised and our opinion is embedded into those accounts, that text will be replaced with the text of our opinion. And so it will be clear from that perspective.
Thank you. I feel quite strongly actually that the introduction to the accounts should actually lay out the fact that, you know, the councils have all come together. This is the last year. All the work was done, if you like, by the team at Somerset Council. I just think there should be something there to actually clearly let any readers in future know that. And the second question is, obviously, as a lot of the reserves positions, etc., are going to alter figures in these accounts, but I couldn't get a sense of, because there was nothing highlighted, whether they have been altered or whether these are as they will be. Right, to make that clear. So if you look at reserves, for example, in the accounts, are they reflected in all the work we've done? Have they been updated it right through the report? Because one bit of the report will knock on to another and another and another and another, and I wasn't sure, because that's quite a big piece of work of itself. I wasn't sure whether that had been done in what we're looking at. I couldn't see it had been done, but I wasn't sure.
As part of our finalisation, we reviewed this set of accounts that was published for committee and compared that to our list of expected adjustments. That's what has ended up in you having a slightly amended version here with some of the highlighting, but everything else is as we would have expected, and all adjustments that we expected have been processed.
Thank you. It would have just been nice then for the last bit of tidy up to take out all these blank pages, etc., because there's a lot here that's not relevant. Like I said, and there are numerous references to South Somerset, and I understand it's a copy and paste forward from previous years, but presumably it will all be tidied up before it actually is, well, I say publicly available. This is publicly available, so what and when will that happen? And when it's lodged, will all these pages be, blank pages be removed, and the references to South Somerset District Council be removed where they need to be?
Ben, you're looking eager to respond.
Yeah, no, you're right, Mandy. So the order of processes here, we presented the accounts here. Should the committee approve as recommended, you've got the audit findings report. The appendix D has the opinion. That opinion will be embedded in the document. We'll update there. And then we'll issue a publication on our internet site that says these accounts are now completed, and publish that. And it will have all those updates that we're talking about in those blank pages being updated. It's just the order of bringing it to committee, because we didn't want to presume, and the opinion isn't issued yet until the approval from the committee is given.
So if I may add, Chair, the inclusion of the opinion cannot happen until we've actually formally given that opinion. So we're bringing you the draft wording of it, what we expect to be saying. Given, I mentioned earlier, Barry Morris's annual leave, we intend to give that opinion on his return in just under 2 weeks' time. So once he has returned and we have given that opinion, the council will then be able to go through the processes that Ben has just mentioned.
Thank you. And can we add a paragraph in? Is this set in stone, or I'm thinking about the introduction actually, because when you read through the introduction, you will get no sense at all about where we're at, how we've got here, and that, if you like, the change, and that this is the last effective set of accounts for that authority. There's not, if I look at the introduction, there is no reference to it whatsoever, and I really feel quite strongly it should be there. So I don't know if the introduction, etc., is set in stone. You know, paragraph 2 is South Somerset District Council. there's no reference there to say what it was moving on to be, etc. So I don't know if it can be amended or whether this is as is.
So officers for guidance, do we still have opportunity to add in a paragraph to explain the context, to put Mandy's mind at ease? Does anyone want to answer?
Mandy, I think it's the timing, isn't it? So it's the 22-23 South Somerset accounts. So any wording that we're trying to put forward is only because of the timing that we're in. I appreciate what you're saying. The journey isn't reflected from there. It's the Chief Finance Officer's intro to the accounts at that point in time. I think we probably have to look at how we want to. We haven't done it for any of the other accounts. So we'll take. I did see Maria put her hand up and down, but as it's the Chief Finance Officer's intro, do we want to? Do we want to add that paragraph to explain the journey?
Maria?
I would suggest we add the paragraph to the 23-24 accounts once these have been closed off and reflecting the fact that we've had 10 sets of accounts. But I take the point that has been made. I would say at this point in time, following this meeting, if they're agreed, I'll be signing the accounts with the chair.
Got Matthew's hand up online as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to point out section 4 of the introduction does refer to the new council, New Somerset Council. So it might be worth just having a look at that particular paragraph to see if you feel there's anything extra or if it's fit for purpose.
Thank you. I saw that. I sort of was expecting it in the intro. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of moving us forward then, Maria's suggestion was to put it into the 3-4 accounts as a sort of backward looking document. Mandy, would you be happy with that as a compromise?
That's fine. I only ever make suggestions. I'm just really conscious when there's a public record that when someone comes back in years to come and looks at them, they will understand actually that it hasn't been to the agreement of these accounts has not been through a committee of South Somerset. It has been through Somerset Council. So I just believe all public records should be absolutely as accurate and as clear as they can be. And it's for readers of future years as opposed to here and now. Thank you.
Maria?
I get that and I completely agree. And there's something about I'm signing a set of accounts for a council that I never knew. But that's part of the responsibility, given that we are where we are in terms of timescales, that as the interim chief finance officer in section 151, I will sign these accounts, even though I will have not been in the organisation at the time where the transactions were taking place. It's just a matter of process and who's responsible as well.
I suppose this opens a whole can of worms for do you look when they're considering local government reorganisation, because you know the very point you've made there, people are being asked to be accountable for organisations they've had nothing to do with, and that feels to me like a little bit of as a governance hole potentially. Obviously, the likelihood of there being individual accountability against these accounts is slim. But you know, in terms of fixing the problem, that's a national level issue really to decide how that should be best affected. I mean, we are now at the point where you know we've gone through this quite a few times over the last 12 months, and I think all of us would agree that it's been less than ideal. You know, we've all felt out of our depths at times. You know, I saw a set of accounts for Sedgemoor, and you know, I no frame of reference, no context. To be able to get into the detail of it. So I think going forward, obviously, we're going to be moving into a very different cadence, a different rhythm, a different way of operating as a committee. So hopefully the ongoing impact of this issue will be limited, but are we all happy to move forward on that basis, that Mandy?
Just to say, to be consistent, you will know I have abstained on the other accounts from the other councils for that exact reason. And so I will abstain. It's not to say in any way I don't agree with everything that's here, but the fact that I have not been in a council and followed the journey and audited right the way through. That's why I will continue abstaining. For everybody in the committee, I have done that, as you will know, with previous accounts as presented.
Yeah, so I mean, I respect that. Obviously, we aren't all able to abstain, otherwise we never get any of the accounts signed off. But you know, as a token gesture, absolutely understand where you're coming from there. Habib?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just like to make a couple of points really that I understand that risk management is now in place, including the robust procurement and control management. Now, may I suggest that we have a regular updates on that progress so we know exactly how we are going forward from here onwards. The other thing that I'd like to sort of assure Sue, my colleague here, that in this market, turning commercial property into a residential asset and breaking even, I can assure you, is quite a good thing. It's, you know, the market is so fragile, if I may put it that way, that, you know, the cost of labor, the cost of material, the inflation, everything has actually come together. And to be frank with you, you have to ask yourself why we are in this position, why councils up and down the country are actually in this position. We are not fit to sort of do commercial properties because we are not able to, but lack of funding has actually put us in this position. So you're not in a bad place to, you know, I can assure you, you know, if you're in the market like that, things like that takes place. You take a risk, sometimes you make money, sometimes you don't, and sometimes you break even. So breaking even is fantastic. Just assurance. Thank you.
Okay. Officer's got that. So can I start to bring us to a resolution now? Are members happy to note the final audit? Are we happy to note that? Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if we need a formal proposal on that, do we, Scott? No.
I'm assuming you're going to take all of these on block.
Yeah, I am.
Which case I believe Councillor Coles.
Yeah, okay, so Councillor Coles has proposed taking the recommendations in the covering report, which are on page 9, 1.1 to 1.3. Are members happy to take those on block? Yeah, proposed. Seconder? Habib? All those in favour? Any abstentions?
Carried, Chair.
Yeah, carried. Thank you all. So at this point, I would like to formally give my thanks to the team, to Ben, to everyone that's been involved in this process. Also to our external auditors, to Barry, who is putting his feet up with some sort of exotic drink, I'm sure, and to Beth as our audit partners. I think without GT's commitment to getting this over the line, we would not be in as good a shape as we are. I'm given confidence that they've been driven to try and see these audits to fruition. It would be very easy, I think, for looking at the state of other councils' audited accounts, for auditors to come in and say, oh, well, there's a backstop coming, I can put my feet up for a few months and, you know, it's not my problem. Well, that's not the approach that our partners have had here. It's not been easy, and I think there are definitely lessons to be learned in terms of how we bring in appropriate external resource when the internal resource is not sufficient in quantity or perhaps the skills that are required to close down sets of accounts. I mean, I'd like to know probably offline, you know, what we're doing to ensure that that we have got processes in place to make sure that that doesn't happen again, because that feels like a big waste of everyone's time and effort over the last probably 6 months while this audit's been rumbling on. I know that there are lots of members of the public who have been concerned that it's taken so long to see this particular set of accounts signed off. I've caught correspondence from a few sort of looking for a smoking gun here. Well, I'm not sure that there is necessarily a smoking gun. The challenge facing the team has all been about making sure that we're getting the best set of accounts that we can possibly put together, given that we lost all of the legacy personnel. I suppose the question is, given that we're going through restructuring, how we're going to make sure that we don't lose the internal memory for this council going forward. And I'd probably like some assurance from our interim 151 officer on this at some point, Maria, as to how we're going to assure that the finance team doesn't lose organisational memory, how we can prevent single point of failure within the team, and how we can build resilience as a group. You know, both in terms of how the committee operates, but also just in terms of how officers are able to carry some of this stuff forward, because it will take a number of years for some of these legacy issues to flow through now. So really a heartfelt thank you to all of the team who have, you know, gone above and beyond to get these accounts over the line. We've now done 11 sets of accounts in the last 15 months, which is pretty phenomenal. I'm not sure anyone would want to repeat that anytime soon, but you know, 11 sets of accounts with the pension fund accounts that we signed off last couple of weeks ago, which, you know, I think is it's over 2,000 pages of information, 4,000 pages of information that have come to committee. So I would like to thank you each individually for your forbearance and assistance in helping to get these accounts over the line. As I said to you, you know, from my very first meeting, the objective for us was really to mitigate the risk to Somerset Council's opening balances of the legacy, so many sets of legacy accounts being opened. I think we've largely done that, and I know it's not always been perfect, and it's definitely not been easy, but I would like to thank you all for your assistance and contribution to get us there. I would like to remind you that there is cake available. You don't have to dash off after the meeting is concluded. Please feel free to dive in. Sorry? Well, you're always welcome, Andy. So, unless there's any other business, I'm going to pronounce the meeting closed. So, thank you all. That is the end for Somerset, South Somerset District Council's audit career. Well done.